Welcome, welcome. Welcome to Behind the 90 with Nika. Before I get into what the 90 means, I really want to welcome this very special guest. Her name is Angie, and she's talking about a very difficult topic to discuss sometimes, but she has been very courageous about talking about overcoming relationship abuse. I'm going to say that again. Overcoming relationship abuse. I know we talked about child abuse, overcoming surviving child abuse, but I thought it was very important to talk about overcoming relationship abuse. And before we get into and I have Angie come on, I want to explain what the 90 means. 90% of what we go through in life is about our past, and only 10% is about the here and now. The 90% represents our story. And that's why I feel like it's so important to tell our stories because it helps to connect us. It helps to build community around certain topics because so often people feel like they're alone and they're not. And so to have Angie come on and share her story about overcoming relationship abuse is such a gift because a lot of times we suffer in silence and we're silent about it and we're embarrassed by it and we don't want to talk about it. So I am very honored to have her here. Welcome, Angie. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for just having me on your platform. And I just appreciate and I love everything that you do. I'm just so excited to be here.
Well, thank you. This is it's really a very like come in your living room and have a conversation
Yes.
type of setup. So I want you to just feel like safe and welcome because you are welcome. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk about such a very important topic because for some people, it's hard to talk about. So, Angie, if you can just kind of give a little background of who you are, and I know you've been sharing your story because you have a YouTube page, so
Yes.
you've been sharing that on that platform. So
Yes.
again, I think that is beautiful because again, it really does help people to recognize that they're not alone, and it really encourages people to kind of speak up about it as opposed to being silent. So, share with me what brought you to sharing your story.
Yes. So I guess the best way to say it was, I guess, starting off from growing up, basically being in a Christian household and always hearing my parents say, the goal is to get married, to find someone so that you can have a family. And I seen that in my household. I saw that as far as just, okay, this is how, when I finally find the right guy, I can be married and happy and have kids and have that family structure because I seen that in my household. And so once I guess hitting after high school, then you go into your 20s and then you learn that okay, trying to navigate relationships is a lot harder than what I thought it would be. And so I feel like there was so many different things that I was going through throughout my relationships, and I feel like one day God was like, you need to share your testimonies, you need to share your story because there are other young girls and other young guys and that may have struggled with relationships and how to find the right person. So I just wanted to build my platform on my personal story, basically giving people a chance to say, hey, they may have been in that same situation and say, hey, I'm not alone. And like you said, a lot of people deal with things in their childhood that they may have not really realized it affected them in relationships, no matter what kind of relationships you're in. So that's basically kind of like my background on why I decided to build the platform and wanting to get my story out because I want to help other men and women, understand that you may go through a lot of trials in your life, but you can get past it. So that was kind of like where
Okay.
my standpoint was.
So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about
Mhm.
your parents' relationship. Did your parents have a solid relationship? You say you grew up seeing
Yes.
marriage. And so did they have a good relationship?
I feel like, yes, my parents had a good relationship overall.
Okay.
They made sure that we were good. I also have two sisters, and my dad was in a previous marriages before.
Mhm.
So I had two stepsisters, and
Mhm.
then me and my brother come from the same mother and father.
Okay.
So I never saw arguing. I
Mhm.
never saw much of dysfunction to
Mm.
my, from what I saw. I think a lot of that was done in private.
Mhm.
So when I looked at a representation of my dad, which, yes, every family has their ups and downs, but I saw basically a good marriage. Like, I didn't see any dysfunction that I could see because a lot of stuff, like I said, they probably handled in private.
Yeah.
So I just looked at it like, okay, this is the type of relationship that I would want for my
Mm.
life.
Absolutely.
I didn't see, like it could be a disagreement here or there, maybe of something of, maybe something didn't get cleaned up or maybe, small stuff, but I never seen them have a full out argument or a full out disagreement where
Mhm.
they're not talking for days or anything.
Mhm.
I just always seen that continue, good process of what a marriage should look like, I
Right.
guess is the best way I could
Well,
explain
that's
it.
a
Yeah.
blessing because, a lot of people don't experience that.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
they they don't know how to when you have a poor relationships, it's easy to continue that cycle if you're not careful
Right.
because you haven't been taught how to engage in a way that's appropriate and healthy.
Right.
But it sounds like they led by example,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So were there many messages from your parents about how you should be as a wife, what kind of husband you should have? And because seeing your father being, I'm sure he took good care of your mom, it sounds like. So
Yes.
you saw that interaction.
Yes.
So was there any direct messages to you in regards to how you should show up? Because I think they were very intentional about saying you're gonna grow up, you're gonna get married.
Mhm.
They wanted that for you,
Yes.
which is
Mhm.
nice, which is
Yes.
really nice that they wanted that for you. So was there messages around how you should be as a wife?
I think the main thing was the direction, which is it kind of gets hard because the Christian background, it was just mainly the God wants you to be able to marry, have a husband. I seen the example for my mom. I would see how she would make sure that my dad was taken care of. He was the main breadwinner at
Mhm,
home. So my mom would work like a part-time job
mhm,
and stuff like that. But I saw that. My mom made sure the clothes were washed, made sure dinner was good, made sure that me and my brother got to school, made sure that we were clean, like the main things that a wife would do. And my dad would, I noticed he would take care of the main bills, take care of things that may have came up with the car as far as
mhm,
getting things fixed. And he had, his, structure. So I feel like for them, they just always put, okay, find someone that is Christ-like, find someone that you can be equally yoked with, find someone that loves you for who you are, which those are all great qualities,
mhm.
but it wasn't exactly like, how do I find this person,
Right.
And a lot of times my dad, and I love my dad because he would say, he will find you. But when you're getting out of high school and you're in your 20s, you like, well, where he at? Like, where is he at? So it was like, okay, you're telling me to pray on it and everything, but I just feel like I wasn't being noticed because
Okay.
when you're in high school, when you're in your 20s, and I use this as example too, like a lot of times you say, okay, I want to wait until marriage and stuff, but the peer pressure of life and things that happen in your high school years and 20s is totally different,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that it would be so much pressure, trying to fit in,
Mhm.
trying to find someone that could be, on your same level, I guess.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So
yeah.
when did your mom, in terms of just, was there any direct messages from your mother? Was there, or indirect messages? Did you see
Mm,
how she took care of your father?
mm.
They probably made it look easy. Did they
Yeah.
make it feel, did you see it and say, I want that?
I knew from just watching my mom, I knew basically how to take care of my boyfriend or soon to be husband.
Okay.
I kind of saw that. So I'm like, if I ever get into a relationship, I know how to kind of play the role of a wife,
Mhm.
and I felt so confident in I could be a mother. That was just my
Mhm.
thing. Like, I know I can do this because I watched my mom make sure that my dad was good. So I
Mhm.
guess that was pretty much it. Like I said, seeing that she took care of home, making
Yeah.
sure that we got to school, making sure that, food was taken care of. And however she did it, she just made it happen while my dad was at work. And like I said, even her working a part-time job, she just, like you said, made it look easy for the most part.
Effortless.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, okay. So It's like they had the course laid out for you.
Yes.
They're like,
Yeah.
okay, baby girl, you need to find you. Well, the husband need to find you.
Right, yes.
Just position yourself and ready to receive,
Right,
right? So
right.
let's talk a little bit about your dating history. Because again, we're
Okay.
talking about overcoming relationship abuse.
Yes.
How early did that start for you? Did you find, was it multiple relationships that you were abused in, or was it one in particular?
I would say, well, I would say for me, it's like starting off the whole relationship journey for me,
Yes.
16 years old, I felt like that was considered my real relationship. Like I've been in another relationship which was middle school, but I know a lot of people say that doesn't count. That doesn't count. You were too young. I feel like every relationship counts in life. For sure. Every relationship counts.
Angie, every
Yes, every
relationship,
relationship. I feel like every relationship counts
sixth grade
because
counts.
I feel like you learn.
Okay.
It's a learning. I guess, yeah, a learning journey. I would have
I
to
like
say. I would
that.
have to say it's a learning journey. So I would say middle school too. I felt like I might have been in a serious relationship back then too.
What? And
Yes.
you were in a serious relationship.
Well, I would
What
say to me, I felt like I was. I guess,
what was y'all doing? Holding hands?
yeah, but we was holding hands and we were in, it was like he was able to meet my family and stuff like that. And I guess it was just kind of like the journey of how I would want a relationship to look like. You get to know my family, I know your family, we walk home from school, that type of thing.
Oh, that's
But
little puppy
then,
love.
yes, puppy love. I would definitely say puppy
Puppy
love.
love.
But then high school, and being honest, I lost my virginity at 16,
Okay.
so it was a young age, but then I also felt like, "Oh, I feel like I might have found the right one." And then once that happens, you lose your virginity to somebody and you feel like, "Okay, I know I didn't do it correctly because I know my parents want me to be married, but at the same time, what if this turns around and he sees me as, I'm his girlfriend now,
Mhm.
and then let's just say after high school, he may propose to me and it's the fairy tale that I wanted." So I may have kind of like made a few turns, but I know I'm still on the right track. But no, that's not how life works.
Right.
So it was like each relationship, I could say starting from there, not every relationship was abusive, but I could notice where I was losing myself because I was trying to give so much to the guys that I was dating because I just wanted them to appreciate and value me and understand who I was. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna give my all to this relationship and I'm gonna come in and show them that I'm that girl." And every time I wasn't chose in the end.
Wow.
So
Explain that a little more. So you said you lost your virginity at 16. How long did you stay in that relationship? Was it before you lost your virginity in that relationship? Had you been in the relationship for a little while and you came to trust this person and you feel like, because again, you were being groomed for marriage. So
yeah,
every relationship
yeah,
you're thinking, hey,
yeah,
this could be it.
yeah,
Because again, that's been
yes,
instilled in you. You're
yes,
groomed for marriage.
yes.
Did your parents, so just going to back up just a little bit.
Mhm.
Did your parents get together very young?
To my understanding, they got together because actually when I was born, my mom was 29, 28. I want to say around that age.
Okay.
So when they got together, which was when they got married, it was a year after when I was born.
Mhm.
So my understanding is that my mom and my dad basically, once they got to know each other and decided, that they were getting married, they were in their late 20s. They were
Okay.
going into their 30s.
Okay.
Yep, when
Okay.
they did. So for me, and this is another reason why I feel like it's so good to know your parents' background because, like I said, my dad, he was previously married before he married my mom. So, of
That's
course, he
right.
had two other kids.
Mhm.
So it's like, I feel like had I known a little bit of my parents' journey as far as their dating and before even my mom, dating my dad, which he told me a little, stories here or there, I feel like it would kind of help me in my journey in relationship
Okay.
because I would have been able to kind of navigate some of the things that my mom could have went through or some of the things that my dad could have went through in relationship. And I would kind of have pointers on what to look for, what to not look
Yeah.
for. Not saying that it would help as far as like me, because you never know when you get with somebody as far as like what the relationship could turn out like. But at least I would have had a little navigation
Yeah.
system, is what I call it.
But you're right. You make a very good point. However, I feel like, our parents or parents in general, we haven't been very intentional. We try to lead by example. We
Hmm.
try to, right, be intentional about that. But in terms of having real dialogue about relationships, I think sometimes we're missing the
Yes.
mark with
Yep.
that. And I think we need
Yes.
to be more sensitive to as our kids grow up, to have a conversation about, good behavior, bad behavior, boundaries, and,
Mhm.
things like that. But I
Yes.
think sometimes we're a little afraid to have that conversation, or we're just not really thinking about it.
Mhm.
But I think we do need to have more conversations. And it doesn't mean that things are going to turn out perfectly, but you want to set some kind of baseline for, like, this is how you want to conduct yourself. And this is what you want to be looking for
Mhm.
in a relationship, and the
Yes.
red flags, the green flags.
Mhm.
This is what you want to be looking for. So, okay, so we're going to go back to your relationship history. Sixth grade, you lost your virginity. You stay with this person. This wasn't an abusive relationship. Was it a healthy relationship?
Pretty much, and I'm sorry, yeah, this was when I was 16 when I lost my virginity, and then yes, the relationship kind of, to me, I thought the relationship was going pretty well. Like,
Mhm.
I thought it was going cool. I'm like, wow, within the next year or so, I'll be graduating from high school. He'll be graduating behind me because he was one grade under me. So I looked at it like, I felt like, okay, this is somebody who I really like, and I feel like it could go far. And then it just seemed like things took a turn. And then it opened the door to me finding out that he was talking to other females.
Mhm.
And it was so crazy how I felt like, wow, somebody who I lost my virginity
Mhm.
to, somebody who I trusted, because we slowly continued to build a relationship. Now, we didn't go to the same high school,
Mhm.
but he came to my graduation when I graduated from high school. We went to prom together. So there was a lot of key moments that we had together. But when I started to learn more about, like, other girls, in high
Yeah.
school, and him also being a football player, which
Mhm.
probably didn't make it any better because, of
Mhm.
course, the football team guys, they always, have a crowd around them and stuff.
Mhm.
And so when I started to learn that there was other females in the mix and that it wasn't just me, that started to break me. Like, I was like, wow.
Mhm.
And the way we broke up was more of just like, we just pulled apart. And
Okay.
it was like, okay, this is not what I thought.
Yes.
But I didn't want to give up on myself because I said, this is a high school relationship. I'm not going to give up here. But I mean, we did try to remain friends even after that. But I just knew in my heart, like, this is just something that I have to let go of, because I knew I felt more and I cared more for him than probably he cared for me
Yeah.
at that point.
So at a very young age, you invested a lot in your relationships,
Yes,
which
yes.
is, again, which is a function of what you grew up on,
Yeah.
right? So let's fast forward, how did the rest of your relationships, so you get into more relationships? Because again, you're a serious person. You're not
Yes, yes,
investing
I'm
time
sure.
and wasting time with
Yes,
nobody because you're looking for a husband. You want
yes,
a husband.
yes.
So what was the next serious relationship? And then we'll go to the relationship that
Yes.
you had to overcome when it came to abuse.
The next relationship, it was me and a guy who we actually met working together. And it was like, he was that side of, like, fun, just energetic. He always had everybody laughing at work, joking and everything. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. And he actually approached me first.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, I can kind of, like, I love this personality like that he has, because I knew me. I'm the type of person, I was quiet around certain people, but around my family, I can be hyper and laugh and joke and stuff. So I feel like he brung that side out of me to kind of just be myself, and that's what made me gravitate to that relationship. But once again, you start to learn things. After so long, you start to hear things at work, or people that he might have known. And then it went from everything was smooth. We were always on the phone talking or going somewhere. And it was always like me and his brother and a group of his family or friends. And the vibes was always cool. But then once again, it's like it gets into that place of like, something is not sitting right.
Mhm.
I'm missing the red flags. And now it's like, it's another female involved. It's somebody else involved. And he ended up actually having a child with this young lady that he was talking to
Okay.
and talking to me at the same time. And he played it off to his family, not being open about the child, and kind of made it seem like the way he presented the child to me, because I actually was around the child when the child was born,
Mhm.
and he made it seem to me like this is my cousin, he's in jail currently,
Mhm.
and I'm watching his son, and what was crazy was the son's name was a junior, but it was his
It was
name
his name.
that was a junior.
Mhm.
And he was like, just trying to be so off-putting with it, just making it sound so natural, like this is, my cousin's child and he's in jail currently. And, I'm just trying to, help take care of the baby and stuff. And then come to find out his brother heard basically the same story that this baby was somebody, and which was crazy because they're brothers, but I guess whatever story he was portraying about this baby, he wasn't open with saying, "This is my child."
Got it.
And then when I found out it was his child, it hurt me because I'm like, I was around this baby who
Thinking it was
he was thinking it was
somebody
somebody
else.
else's child.
And that's yeah.
And now it's like, okay, I'm going through another situation with somebody who I felt brung a lot out of me, brung so much fun and loving. He just seemed like a caring person. And now I get to this place where I give my all, I have his back through everything. And now you have a child, and it's like, where do I go from
Yeah,
here?
how old were you in this relationship?
When I was in this relationship, I would have to say, because this was one of my shorter relationships, I wanna say this relationship was, like, between a year and a half,
Mhm.
almost going into 2 years. So I wanna say I might have just hit 20, 19, 20,
Okay.
because this was, like, going into my 2nd job. I started working here. Matter of fact, I was working at McDonald's. So it was
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
when you're at that age in high school going into college, I'm working at McDonald's. This was
Okay.
a second job that I had. And so I had to be like 19, 20.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're gonna fast forward a little bit.
Mhm.
So you two relationships, like you
Mhm.
say, you sound like you're all sorry, would you say you've always been in a relationship? Are you ever single or you always been kind of in relationship?
I've always been in relationship because I learned that for me, it was like, and I want to try to explain this the best way.
Mhm.
It for me, it was, if I know that I'm going to be in a sexual encounter with somebody,
Mhm.
I feel like I need to make this a relationship because it made me feel better.
Okay.
Because I felt so bad entering into a sexual relationship with somebody and not being a girlfriend or not having that
Okay.
name and title.
Okay. So
Mhm.
that kind of it almost like obligated you to the relationship. It had
Yes.
to be
Yeah.
something to make you feel
Like I was going.
content with it,
Mhm.
that you were doing the
Yep.
right thing. So
Yep.
we're in a relationship. You can justify
Yeah.
having sex with this person. We're in a
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it seemed like doesn't seem like they were horrible relationships, but it seems like because they're young,
Mhm.
people lie.
Yeah.
So that's the start of just accepting substandard behavior.
Yes.
So when you
Yes.
found out this was his child, can you just kind of briefly talk about what happened? What was your process for that relationship? Did you stay in it? Did you leave it? When you found out, what did you do?
Well, what ended up happening was when I did officially find out that it was his child, it was from his brother.
Mhm.
His brother. By this time, when I did officially find out that it was his child, me and his brother, we kind of like already had dissolved the relationship. Like it was already kind of like cut, like we had to cut it because there was other lies and other things that I was learning within that.
Mhm.
So it kind of just was one of the things where it just fell by the wayside and we ended up stop talking and
Okay.
stuff like that. But at work, when I was at work one day, his brother had came up to me and
Mhm.
he was like, that's his baby.
Mhm.
And I was like, the as I started to piece some of the things together that I was hearing, it made sense, especially when I learned the baby's name.
Okay.
It made sense. But of course, I didn't want to believe it, but like I said, by that point, we were already pretty much at end. So when I found out from his brother, it just basically let me know I have to cut this. I mean,
Okay.
like there's no more trying to go back and trying to make it work, even if he was to come back, which he didn't come back anyways. But I just had to prepare myself. Like even if he tried to come back, I just know I can't accept it.
Okay.
I
Okay.
couldn't
So you had
accept
your
it.
boundaries, you had your
Yeah.
standards, which is good.
Yeah.
So okay, so again, you've been in relationships where there's been some unfaithfulness, some lying,
Yes.
some so will I call that abuse? I won't call it abuse, but I will call it just being deceptive,
Yes.
not really being honest, and so that's not good either. I'm not
No,
going to
right,
minimize
right.
that.
Yes.
That's not
Yes.
good either when you enter into a relationship and people aren't being honest. That's
Yes.
very hurtful. Like they're living a lie. So let's fast forward. You've been in relationships. So if you had to categorize all your relationships, if you had to give it a title in terms of how you showed up in your relationships, how would you categorize all your relationships? And then we'll talk about the relationship
Mhm.
that you had to overcome when it came to abuse. If you had to categorize your relationships, how would you categorize them?
I would have to say, in total, the relationships that I was in, I would have to number one say I wasn't paying attention to red flags. And even though I was younger, there was still little things that stood out to me that
Mhm.
was like, something's not clicking, you
Mhm.
know? And when you start to learn that people are not being honest, not telling the truth, it's like you want to give people the benefit of the doubt because yeah, there's moments where I felt like I couldn't be honest or I had to not tell the truth 100% because I may have wanted people to still have the good perception of me because I am a good person, but I do make mistakes. So I was giving that grace in those relationships.
Mhm.
I would say number one, not paying attention to red flags, and number two, not setting full boundaries for
Mhm.
what I needed for myself.
Okay.
In every relationship I got into, I put myself on the back burner and I
Mhm.
never really, I feel like a lot of it was like not loving me, but wanting to love them so much so that they could love me and validate me because I was like, I just know I'm such a good girlfriend, but why aren't they seeing it? Why aren't they seeing the effort? Why aren't they seeing that I'm there every time they need me? And so I would definitely say that's how I would categorize it. It was not paying attention to the red flags and letting myself go in these relationships because I just wanted to be married
Yeah.
and have that fairy tale family,
Yeah.
just hoping that somebody would finally see that I was worth it.
Yeah. And the thing is, what we don't realize is that we can't do enough to make somebody be the person we need them to be. It has
Mhm,
to be in them to do it.
mhm,
So I think a lot of women feel like if I do this, I cook for him, I do this, I be a good girlfriend, I be his safe space, I'm his peace. And
mhm.
you do all those things and they still, not appreciate it. They venture off somewhere else.
Mhm.
It's not your fault. There's
Yes.
nothing you can do about it because that's who they are. A person can only give you what they have inside.
Yes.
So it's not your fault. So I appreciate that outlook on it. Yeah. As you kind of put it all together. So let's talk about the last, few minutes. I definitely want to really get into the abusive relationship. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So this was now I personally I'm not going to say that online dating is the best because of what I experienced.
Okay.
But I do understand that people have found love on the internet. So I'm not going to sit up there and say that. I just feel like you have to be very cautious and safe with it.
Okay.
Back when MySpace was popping, I had a MySpace page and everything, and you're keeping in touch with your friends and stuff. So MySpace was definitely what was happening before Facebook and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I come across, I guess I get a message or a notification in my inbox, and it was this guy. And come to find out, we both went to middle school actually, he went to the same middle school, but he ended up getting transferred to another middle school. So by this time, of course, this is after high school.
Mhm.
And I want to say I had to be like maybe 21, 22 around this time. So, anyways, I feel like it was safe because I'm like, oh, he knows some of the people I know.
Mhm.
So I felt like it was okay to have conversation and to continue the conversation with him. So everything went good. We had so much in common, what I felt like. And we ended up actually meeting in person. And like I said, once again, I felt safe because I was like, okay, this is somebody who knows people that I've went to middle. With or grew up with.
Yeah.
So I felt comfortable.
Familiar,
Yep.
right?
And so we went on a few dates. Everything was smooth. And then it was like oh, he was letting me know, like, I'm going to move because he had a roommate. So when I would come over there to visit or when we would go out, I might park my car there at the house and stuff, and he had a roommate and he wanted to move. So anyways, like the relationship kind of like sped off pretty quickly because within months we were technically signing a lease together. And I
Okay.
was the co-signer. And he wanted to make sure I was comfortable. And I'm like, yeah, we're entering this relationship and stuff like that. I'm like, this is good. I felt comfortable with moving with him because once again, I'm looking at it like this might be really it now. This might be
This
the
might be
relationship.
this may be
Yeah.
it for you.
So we kind of like not trying to, but kind of fast forwarding with the fact that we get the apartment. And once again, I noticed red flags before we got the apartment, but I didn't really tune into him
Mhm.
because I felt like he had a way of speaking and making his points valid, which I was like, oh, you know what? I didn't really think about that. Like one situation that I would use, for example, is he ended up putting me on his Sprint account. So I had a phone up under his account. And I thought this was cool. He was like, I don't mind you being on my account. Sprint is a good company and, we can both be on the same account. Cool. And then it started going into another direction where it's like, don't be talking to no dudes on this line. And I'm like, okay. But then I'm thinking to myself, like, well, I do have male friends that are not on that level, which I understand that with all respect, we are on the same line. But it was like instantly I started seeing territorial, I
Yeah.
started seeing controlling,
Mhm.
and it was just starting that downfall again of like, okay, what have I really got myself into? But like I said, once again, not paying attention though to the red flags.
Mhm.
But we get the apartment and everything seems like it's going good.
Mhm.
And then there's a shift. It's like I can't eat certain things in the refrigerator or in the cabinet, like snacks that we had.
Mm.
It was like, "Oh, I paid for this." It was like, "You can have the honey buns or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, I can't survive off of honey buns all day." You know what I'm saying? Like, we're in an apartment together now, we're living together, like, and it was like, now it's an issue because I'm too skinny. It was almost like, well, you need to, eat certain things because you need to gain a little weight. And I'm like, wow, where did this come from? You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So it was like slowly seeing a pattern of like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, this is not the person that he presented himself when I first met him.
Yeah. But it doesn't look like you said it. You didn't have a whole lot of time to kind of assess
Right.
things,
That's
right?
true. Right.
So
Yeah.
you didn't really have time to actually see who
Yeah.
he was.
Yeah.
So he was kind of showing you in a short amount
Yeah.
of time who he
Yeah.
was. So you didn't
Yeah.
really have time.
Yeah, because when we finally got the apartment, by this time, I may have known him 7 up to 7 months. So I definitely take now that I'm older, I definitely understand that wasn't the smartest move. Neither
Yeah.
did I tell my parents either. I didn't tell them that I got the apartment. They
Oh,
didn't even know. They
okay.
didn't know. So they thought that I was just going over there spending the night and chilling with him and stuff like that at at
They
his
didn't know you
house,
had
but they never
co-signed.
knew that I co-signed. They
Okay.
never knew where the apartment was, nothing. Because I just didn't want them to rain on my parade.
Mhm.
I'm like, I got this nice apartment. I'm with this guy who has a nice job, has a nice car. He's got so much going for himself. I'm like, and now I feel like I'm really in to me, I feel like he was an upgrade from the guys that I talked to because I'm like, oh, he's showing up as a man. So I'm
Mhm.
like, nah, I really feel like I did good.
Yeah.
And so it was like getting the apartment showed me. It
Okay.
really woke me up.
So it went
Yeah.
from let's get this line together. That was
Mhm.
that kind of control,
Yeah.
or it could have been something to trying to be helpful too. But
Yeah.
when it went into who you could talk to,
Yes.
you said,
Yes.
okay, that don't sound right."
Yes.
Then it
Mhm.
talks about these food in this cabinet. These are mine.
And then you got to figure it out for yourself,
Yourself,
pretty
and then you're
much.
too skinny, so you need to be eating more.
Yeah.
So it just progressively, your
Yes.
antenna started to go up and like,
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
so share more. What else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another occasion happened where it was like he was allowed to have his friends over. One guy came over that was his friend. They watched the game together. They made chicken,
Mhm.
but I had to be in the back room. Then when I wanted one of my friends to come over to come chill, spend the night, because I was proud. I'm like, this is my first place with my boyfriend. I want her to come and visit. Then it was like, oh no, you can't have her come over here. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, so you can have company, but I can't. Then it started getting to the place of me wanting to kind of dig deeper. And I ended up looking through his phone, and he was clearly must have been talking to somebody or in communication with another female.
Mhm.
And I remember this day like so clearly. He was supposed to be going out that night, and he was ironing his clothes. And I think he picked up on the fact that, or it could have been even me saying something, because I know this was a while back, but it was like he knew I was looking through the phone, or he knew that there was something. And he took the iron and he tried to burn me with the iron. Like he was following me with the iron. And I'm like, that day was like, okay, it's getting real.
Mhm.
Like it's getting real. And he had a way of kind of trying to laugh and play it off like he wasn't serious, but I knew, like,
You felt
it's
it.
serious.
It didn't
Like
feel right.
he's showing that he can go that extra mile. And because I'm so nice and caring, and I kind of bypass a lot of things that he was saying and doing while we were living together, he knew like, oh yeah, I can get away with this. So I felt like he just kept pushing, kept pushing. How far can I go with this? So when he came up to me with the iron, I'm like, you not about to, like, you really not about to burn me with the iron. Like, and then he backed up, and then he was, I guess, trying to basically say that, the person that he was talking to may have been somebody that he used to know and all of that. But then it goes back to my head, like, but you felt some type of way if I was talking to even friends that might have been a
Yeah.
male.
Mhm.
So now it's all replaying back, like, okay. And now I started to feel like I might be in a worse situation than what I'm
Yeah.
in.
So this is how many months in?
Now, by this time that we have the apartment, I would probably say maybe going like 3 months until when we had the
3
apartment.
months.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It was
Okay.
early.
So it kept getting so when you think of it, let me go back. It
Mhm.
kept getting progressively worse. So
Yes.
when you look at the power and control wheel that we
Mhm,
have in front of us, so there's physical violence, there's sexual violence, and there's a lot of different, elements to the power and control will.
mhm.
So there's coercion, I can never say that word, and threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing and denying and blaming, using children, economic abuse, male privilege. Which one in this power control will, which one would you say applied to you?
I would say it was definitely showing the male privilege and
Mhm,
concern and threats. I would definitely say, because he made it seem like he was that man.
mhm,
It was kind of like, no matter what, I'm gonna get my way, and I'm
mhm,
gonna show you that I can have whatever I want, how I want it.
mhm,
And then the concern of threats, like I said, which is other issues that, I will mention. But when I saw the whole iron situation,
mhm,
I was like, this is gonna get worse.
mhm,
I knew that, because even though I can tell you're kind of playing, I'm picking up on the fact that you try to play, but you're really
mhm.
serious. So I would definitely say, I mean, I definitely feel like it's sprinkles of all of this, but the
Okay.
male privilege and concern and
The
threats
coercion and
was the top. Oh, coercion. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Coercion and
I
threats.
can
I'm
never
sorry about
pronounce it.
that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But you know what? It's I can never say that word. It's called. We know what we're talking about.
Yes,
I'm gonna say
yes,
it's threats. I
yes.
can never say that word 'cause I never
But the
use it.
threats for sure. Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. But
No, that's
yes, the
okay.
threats for sure. So I definitely would say those were showing up, showing
Okay.
up in the time that we were living together.
So when you say there were threats or like intimidation, just what kind of threats would he make?
It was more so, oh, well, I guess I can use this for example. Because it gets hard, because and I know a lot of women would be like, I wouldn't have put up with this. But I feel like in my head, I'm like in my 20s, and I feel like I just don't want to fail again. So I
Mm,
want to make this work, because I want to be able to show my parents that I can find a good relationship. So I just kept
So
trying.
you had something to prove.
Yes, I had.
So although you knew it was an unhealthy relationship, in your mind, you had something to prove. I gotta make this right because 'cause I'm living with him, we're having
Mhm.
sex, we're playing house
Yes,
pretty
now I'm
much.
living with
So
him.
now I
Right.
really gotta
I really
solidify
want to
this.
show this. Even though
Yeah,
my parents didn't know, I just knew when I finally presented it
there
to
you go.
them, I can say, "Oh yeah, well we're engaged or married," and now I can make it clean it up a little bit
Okay.
because I knew my parents wasn't gonna have it. Even
Yeah.
though I was in my 20s, I still knew that they wasn't having that. They was not gonna. They would have shut it down. You're not
Okay.
getting an apartment with
Yeah.
him, you know. So, but getting back to what you were saying, so one day it was a Jordan release day, and a lot of people know Jordans are like the top shoe, and you would have to stand in line. Okay, you
Mhm.
would have to stand in line for the shoe. But anyways, I didn't make it in enough time to get his shoe size. And that day he flipped. He flipped on the phone. He was upset. He was mad. And I was like, okay. And he was threatening, like, how dare you not be able to get these shoes? I mean, you could have left the house early. And I knew I was like, wow, you are really mad. Like
Mhm.
over something,
Over a pair of
and
shoes.
and I just knew like right then also that was another situation like this is getting worse, than
Right.
what I
Okay.
knew
Yeah.
it could be.
So did you start to doubt yourself? Did you start feeling bad about yourself? Because like you said, it was the male privilege, it was the threats, it was the you said on this will, it was pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I
What
seen a lot of the different things.
yeah. Was there any physical abuse?
Yes. Yes, there was. So I'll make this story very quick. It was a moment where we thought that I could have been pregnant, and he wanted me to get a morning after pill.
Mm.
Long story short, I came back from the clinic that he sent me to, and I didn't take the morning after pill. They did do a pregnancy test. I wasn't pregnant,
Mhm.
but I just knew in the moments that I never made the decision of if I wanted to keep the baby or the pregnancy if I was. Because what happened was is the lady was telling me, the nurse was saying, it's too early to really tell if you are pregnant,
Mm.
even though the pregnancy test says that you're not. So while I was sitting in the waiting room, I came across a book of women who had abortions. And at that moment, it just touched me because they were writing basically letters to their unborn child. And I just left the clinic because I said, I never got a chance to decide. Anyways, by the time I get home, he comes home after me, and I let him know I didn't take the morning after pill. I told him what the nurse said. She said that I wasn't currently pregnant, but that there's a chance that I may need to take a test later on just to make sure that I'm not. He was not happy with that answer, and he decided to jump on me. He jumped on my stomach, and he constantly kept putting all of his pressure on top of me. And he kept telling me that I wasn't going to mess up his life. That's more the cleaner version of
Mm.
it. And by this time, I didn't know what to think.
Mhm.
I just was like, I was scared. And I just was like, why would you? In my head, I'm thinking, why would you do this knowing that if I was pregnant, this is your child too? But he didn't care.
Yeah.
He didn't care. And I was I was so hurt. I was so hurt. Like he just kept jumping on me and putting all his pressure and just he was trying to accomplish me not being pregnant. Like you're trying to kill a baby if the baby was in there. Even though I wasn't
You weren't
later on, I
pregnant,
found out
okay.
that I wasn't. But the fact that you were so adamant on killing this
Yeah.
baby,
So
if
how
there
long yeah,
was.
so how long into the relationship that you
When he finally, because he was the one who told me that he felt like because something had happened within the last encounter that we had, and he was like, I just need you to go to the clinic, take a morning after pill because just in case it's a mistake, whatever, you know
but
we
I'm
can
saying
end
ho
it
yeah,
here.
but I'm just saying how long
Okay.
were you into the relationship? Was it
Oh, I'm
5 months,
sorry.
6
Yeah.
months?
By this time, I want to say because like the first situations was 3 months in. So by this time, I want to say we had the apartment maybe five
About
months
5
in.
months,
Yeah,
okay.
it was probably like Up to 5
Okay.
months, because we had that 1-year lease, so
Okay. So for
yeah.
5 months, you experienced some things. So like you said, some
Yes.
control,
Yeah.
some threats,
Yeah.
some like you said with the iron,
Yeah.
not having your being able to have your friends over.
Yeah.
Almost like isolation, isolating you from them. He can have people over. You can't eat. You're too
Yeah.
skinny. So
Yeah.
it's the criticism.
Then he
Uh,
started hitting also. He
then he was
started
hitting.
hitting
Then he
me.
started hitting you
Yeah.
within that 5 month period.
Mhm.
So after he did that, jumping on your stomach because he thought you were pregnant, wanting to terminate it. How long did you stay in the relationship after? What was your thought process, you know, in that relationship? Like, man, should I be staying? Like, what should I do? Because again, you have this mindset of, I gotta stay. I
Yes.
gotta stay. I gotta make
Yes.
this work. I didn't
Yes.
sign this lease. I didn't have sex and I'm doing all
Yes.
these things. I gotta make this work. Was your mindset still, I gotta make this work?
The crazy part about it is that I ended up getting kicked out of a place that I was paying half the rent on,
Who
and
kicked
when
you out?
he told me
Okay.
I had to leave. Yep.
So he told you had to leave
Yep.
from your home that you had
Yes.
helping to pay the bills.
Yes. To move in another girl, I ended up finding out.
Oh wow.
Yes, it gets deep, and I know it's layers to it, but just to clear that up, because I know,
We got to do a
yes, we
part two.
definitely would have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
But yes, so what ended up happening was he basically, to sum it up, he felt like, "Hey, I feel like we were better off being friends.
Mhm.
I just feel like you should give the key back, and we just gonna move on as a friendship, like a friendship. And if basically he was calling the shots, like if we decide to work on this or whatnot, then we can get back together. Like it's so much detail to it. It was
We
crazy. Yes, it
Yeah,
was
we do.
crazy.
We will have to do a part two of
Yes,
this.
it was
But
crazy.
what were you? Would you have left if he
Mhm.
had not put you out, or would you have stayed?
Because it was a 1-year lease, I feel like I would have stayed, because I just was like, I put so much into it that I was feeling like there had to be a way to get help for this. But then there was also God,
Mm.
by me getting giving him back the key, I feel like,
So he forced you
yeah,
to.
pretty much,
So
pretty much. But it probably was for the best for my safety at
yeah,
that
because
point.
you would not have made the decision for yourself
Right.
to leave
Yes.
the relationship.
Yes. And even when I found out, he never told me it was another girl moving in. I found that out from Facebook, when Facebook really
Oh.
started to get popular then.
So how long were you guys together?
Together, I would say at least 2 years when we were together, because like I said in the beginning, it kind of
Okay.
rushed from
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
But I would say in total, from the whole experience and everything that had
Mhm.
happened, I would say at least up to 2 years.
So those 2 years, you experienced a lot of ups and downs with this
Yes.
person. But
Yes.
again, the mindset was, I need to stay. I need to stay in this
Yes.
relationship because you're such a committed person. But at the
Yes.
same time, you're sacrificing so much to be in a relationship where a person is. Did you even know what your boundaries were? 'Cause a lot of
No,
times
yeah.
we allow things to happen, not knowing what our boundaries are. So we kind of just kind of put up with stuff because people go through stuff. It's no big deal. But it's surprising because, like you said, you saw your mother and father have such a healthy relationship. Yeah, there may be some things behind the scenes that happen, but you saw that healthy relationship. But it sounds like what you were going after, you wanted a partner. You wanted to really do the right thing.
Mhm.
You wanted to get married. I mean, there's no judgment because I don't think any of us really go about it the perfect way, right?
Mhm.
We all, want to be, I won't say all. A lot of us want to be in relationships. For those that want to be, sometimes we do make some sacrifices. But do you
Yes.
feel like in your case, you sacrificed too much in that relationship?
Yes, this was the relationship that broke me down,
It
for
broke you
sure.
down.
It broke me down all the way. And the healing and recovery from it was definitely a process.
Mhm.
But it was so many different layers to even after that situation, where it was like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I find myself here? Knowing that this is nothing that my parents wanted for me, and I never wanted it for myself.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I said, this is a story that we can't rush,
Mhm.
right? So would you be willing to come back to share more?
Yes, I definitely will.
Yeah, so we definitely need to
Yes.
do a part two of this because I feel like the story is so important. We can't rush it.
Yes.
So we know right now you're out of the house,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Because you were forced out of the
Yes,
house.
I
There
was
was a
forced to give back
person,
my key.
yeah, here was a person that was abusing you,
Yep.
but you were forced out.
Yes.
And that's I'm sure that had to be disheartening. It's just like, man, sometimes you ask yourself as women, why do we allow the men to make the decision when
Mhm.
they're, you know, doing the abusing or they're messing up?
Mhm.
We should be able to make that decision for ourselves, but there's a lot to go into why we don't. And I think I would like to talk more about like why didn't you, when you
Mhm.
saw those red flags, why didn't you leave? And I know you talked about, hey, I had this mindset of I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna make it work because I'm in too deep. I gotta
Yes.
make this work.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
would like to hear more about that. And I think our listeners would love to hear that because I feel like because again, there's no judgment because I really do feel like there are a lot of women out there that sacrifice on many levels to be in a relationship. But we got to realize that we got to know what our boundaries are. We got to know what our worth is.
Yes.
We can't sacrifice self to be in a relationship. And if we have to do that, that's when we need to rethink the relationship.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
definitely would love to have you back. So we're gonna set up a date to
Yes.
have you back. I really do appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. And like I said, this kind of story can't be rushed. So that's why we'll have to have a part two from it.
Yes, and I thank you for just having your platform for me to be able to share this. And I just want to be able to help other men and women because, yes, this story was definitely a ride for sure. It was a ride,
Yeah.
but I was able to survive it and overcome it.
Yeah.
And that's the true testimony of it.
Yeah. I want people to know I don't wanna give up too much because I feel like
Yeah.
there is so much more that you
Yes.
could share, and I think our listeners, what you shared, I'm sure they'll be interested to hear the part 2, like, what happened
Yes.
after that, so we'll
Yes.
definitely get that done as quickly as possible, so thank you. How can people reach you? I know you have a YouTube page. What's the name of your YouTube page?
Yes, my YouTube page is Miss Angie's Outlook. So that's MISSANGIES and then Outlook, OUTLOOK.
Okay, Miss
Mhm.
Angie
Yeah,
Outlook.
Angie's. Yeah.
Miss Angie's
Yes.
Outlook.
Yes.
Miss Angie's Outlook. And I'll put it in the content, on the content so people will see it. Thanks so much for joining today's episode. If you enjoyed the story time, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a review and share with your friends to help us reach more listeners. Stay tuned for more insightful stories. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new connections with us.